All right, so here we go with the rest of our lesson on working with percents. So before we talked about Mama Patty and we made our percent diagram. In our percent diagram, now we went through and we said that 45% was our percent. She has 20 hats and we know that this is the whole. And we knew that 0% lined up with 0 hats. And we knew that 100% lined up with 20 hats. And we wanted to know what 45% was. So in this case, what we can do is we can count by fives and we can get ourselves to 45% up here, and it'll allow us to get to both 20 and to 100%. So we can do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. So we'll move that in a little bit so it makes it a little bit nicer. Okay. So now I know that I took 20 and I broke it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 pieces. So I know that each one of these is going to be worth 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, oh my goodness, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so if we look at 45%, we know that that's right here. So we know that 45% should be equal to 9 blue hats. Okay, so this is the visual. We're saying that out of all of her hats, this many of them should be blue, and we know that 45% in this case matches up with 9 or represents 9. Well, now we're going to look at mathematically how we do that. So we need to be able to do both. You have to have that visual understanding and know what's actually going on, so that way this math part makes more sense and so you can put it together. So here you have 45%, and we know that 45% is a percent, but we can't use percent in mathematical operations because of the fact that percentages aren't numbers. Remember, 45% in this case actually meant 9. So what we have to do is we have to actually turn that percent, which means out of 100. So we can do this one of two ways. We can say that the percent is a decimal, in which case we would multiply. So percent as decimal would mean we would multiply, or we can use a proportion by doing percent as a fraction. Either or works, okay? And I am going to require that you do it both ways and then you find which way is more comfortable to you. I don't want you just sticking with one though originally just because you think it's going to work. Try both so that way you know what works best for you. Of always means to multiply, and 20 is how many hats we have. So we know that this is the percent and this is the whole, and so we're looking for the part. So when we multiply, it literally tells us exactly what we need to multiply. We need to multiply 45% as a decimal, which we know is 45 hundredths, times, because it's 45 and of means to multiply, so it's kind of like you're taking of and replacing it with the multiplication sign. And in this case, 20, because we have 20 hats. So if you take the percent times the whole, that will always give you the part. The other way you can do it is you can set it up as a proportion. So the of doesn't really mean anything to us, but what we do know is that the percent is always out of 100. So this would be 45 over 100 is equal to x, which is equal to our part over our whole. So our whole in this case being 20. And then you know that you can use cross multiplication and division to solve this, because you know that however you go from 100 to 20 is how you have to go from 45 to x, or you know that your cross products need to be equal, because in order to be proportional, these things have to be equal, these two ratios have to be equivalent. So this 45 to 100 has to be equivalent to x to 20. So you have to find what makes x be in a ratio that's proportional to 45 to 100. Okay, so if we go ahead and solve that, so if we do 45 hundredths times the 20, okay, and we do 45 times 20, so it's not 900 because you know there's a decimal here, so we move the decimal 2 times to the left. So our answer is equal to 9, which is our part, which means 9 blue hats. Or if you were doing it as a proportion, you know that 45 per 100 has to be equivalent to x per 20. So for every 100 hats I pull, 45 of them should be blue. So if I have 20 hats, how many of them should be blue? So in this case, I can say that, well, I know that to go from 100 to 20, I divide by 5. So I know 45 divided by 5 gives me 9. So x has to be equal to 9. I can also do cross multiplication. I know 45 times 20 is 900. So I know that 100 times x has to equal 900. If I divide both sides by 100, I know x is equal to 9. So no matter how I did this, I got the same answer of 9 blue hats. So here we go. When we're setting this up, it's not always the case that we're going to get the percent and the whole, which is what we've kind of been working with. Now we want to know what percent of 2,000 is 204. So we have what we know is the whole. So what percent of 2,000, so that tells you that that's the whole, is 204, and we know that that's the part. So remember, when you set it up as a proportion, your percent is always out of 100, and the percent is what we don't know. So of course that's going to have to be our x, and it's always over 100. And then remember that it's always the part over the whole. So in this case, we know that what we should have found is x over 100 is equal to 204 over 2,000. Or if we wanted to set it up as a multiplication problem, it's always your total times your percent as a decimal is equal to your part. And in this case, you know that your total is 2,000, your percentage is unknown, but whatever that is, so you have 2,000 times x is equal to 204, because it's your total, percent as a decimal, and part. And we know 2,000 was the total. Your percent as a decimal in this case is unknown. I almost said 45 because that's what we just did. And your part is 204. So what we know ends up happening is that we end up taking and dividing both sides by 2,000. And this is kind of like when you find your percentages on a test. You know that your percent is equal to 204 divided by 2,000. But remember, x is a percent written as a decimal. So then you have to change that decimal back to a percent. And remember, we do that by multiplying by 100, which also means we just move the decimal 2 places to the right. So here we can use our calculator and do 204 divided by 2,000. And we get 0 and 102 thousandths. So I know x equals, so I know I have to move it 2 places to the right, so x equals 10 and 2/10%. Or if I solve it like this, I do x over 100, 204 over 2,000, because look at, that's kind of what we end up doing anyways, is saying that now we have 100 times 204, so we have 204, and we add 2 zeros because of the 100. So we know x times 2,000 has to equal 20,400. And look at that, I ended up dividing both sides by 2,000, but in this case, what ended up happening is I multiplied by the 100 first instead of multiplying by the 100 at the end. Okay, so remember, doing this means that we took this and multiplied it by 100. Okay, so here what we do is we multiply by 100 first and then divide. And then when we divide, so if you do 20,400 divided by 2,000, you get 10 and 2/10. So you end up with x equals 10 and 2/10. And since that is over 100, you know that x is equal to 10 and 2/10%. Okay, again, right now what we're going to focus on is making sure we can put our pieces in the correct place. So I would like you to pause and try it on your own and come back and check your work. All right, so here we know that 55 is the part because it says 55 is 20% of what? So is kind of like saying equal to. That's the percent. So we are looking for the whole. All right, so if I take my glasses over, I know that 20 over 100 should be equal to 55 over x. Or I know that my total, in this case, is unknown, but that my decimal is 20 hundredths, and that my part is 55. Okay, and then what I end up doing to both sides here is dividing by 20 hundredths. So x equals 275 as my total. Or I have 55 over 100 is equal to 55, oops, not 55. 20 over 100 is equal to 55 over x. When you multiply these together, you get 55 times 100, which is 5,500. So you know x times 20 has to equal 5,500. And again, look at what you're doing. You're saying, okay, well, I'm going to take basically this same number and divide it by 20. Here, you move the decimal 2 places to the right, and you get 20. Here, you move the decimal 2 places to the right, and you get 5,500. So by doing that, you get the same answer here. Okay, so you have 55,000 divided by 20. X is equal to 275. All right, so now we have the percent. So it's saying, what is 75% of 150? So the of tells you that this is your whole and that you were given the percent. So you know that you should have 75 over 100 is equal to something over 150. And that 150 times 0 and 75 hundredths is equal to something. And this is where it's nice because it's all just set up for you. Okay, and you can go ahead and solve that one on your own. And then what you're going to do is you have these problems that you are going to do on your own. And like I had mentioned before, you should actually have some of these where you have the picture and the proportion and the equation. If you don't have that, then you need to complete all of them with the picture, the proportion, and the equation. Remember in the notes it says do the picture, do one with the proportion, do one with an equation. That is still what I would like you to do. Please make sure that if you have any questions that you write them down or email me so that way we can go over them in class.